Hello, thanks for joining us today. My name is Ray Lau. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Stax, and I'm so excited to have special guests Aliza and Victoria, and they're going to be talking to us about marketing payments and how you can market your payments product to your audience, to your customers. So I'm super excited to have them on the call today, and we're just going to jump right into introduction. Um, I'm going to have Victoria go first. Victoria, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'm going to have Aliza share, and then we'll just get started.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name's Victoria Walker. I'm the partner marketing coordinator here. I've been at Stax for almost 2 years, helping support our partner marketing initiatives.
Awesome. And then I'm Aliza Sharma. I lead our partner marketing team here at Stax. I've been with the company for about 6 years. And then my team, which includes Victoria, helps drive payments adoption through marketing efforts to create marketing strategy and engagement with our partners.
All right, so you're you all are talking to some of the top marketing people that, for payments. And what's great about Aliza and Victoria's roles are they do this every day with our partners. They're constantly talking to our partners, figuring out their go-to-market strategy with their particular payments products. So it's not just working, getting experience from, let's say, one marketer that's only worked at one company. It's just getting a ton of experience from all the different partners that we do have here at Stack. So I think it's going to be very insightful. I think you're going to learn a lot, and there's going to be a lot of tips that you get that we've seen success with from various partners that have marketed that Victoria and Eliza have helped market their payments products. So I'm super excited to dive into that. So without further ado, let's jump right into some of the questions that we got around marketing payments. And these are specific questions that we received from a survey that we put out there. So we really want to make sure that we're always here. Stax is always here to answer any questions that you have. So um, these are some questions that we got directly from our partners and other prospects as well. So wanted to highlight those with our team here today. So um, the first question I'm going to ask Victoria, what
Mhm.
are the keys to successfully launching a payment solution in the market?
Well, one of the most important steps is creating a tailored go-to-market plan that reflects the unique needs of the partner's business and their merchant base. So we love working one-on-one with our partners to build strategies that address the real pain points and highlight the value of embedded payments in their specific vertical. And then from there, it's all about alignment, making sure marketing, sales, support are all on the same page about the value proposition. And then we develop clear messaging, sales collateral, enablement materials, not just for their internal teams, but also to educate merchants, generate interest, and ultimately guide them towards activation. And this approach has guided successful launches where we've developed compelling pre-launch pitches, landing page content, and another launch where enablement support included sales battle cards and customer-facing one-pagers to support their rollout and drive confidence across their teams.
I love that. Yeah, I love the approach of just working across the team. So I think one of the big takeaways is making sure that um, you, as someone who's launching marketing a new payments product, but making sure that you're working across with all the different teams, not just,
Mhm.
not just the sales team, um, different things like that. So, Aliza, what are some ways, or how do we build a brand presence in a crowded marketplace? So, payments is there's so many players, especially um, if you serve a broader market, but even if you're in a more specific vertical, right? Sometimes there can be
Mhm.
very specific vertical solutions, and then sometimes you're still competing against some of the broader payment solutions that are out there. So what are some tips that you have um, for people that are launching a payments product, and how do they stand out in a crowded marketplace?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's something that we uh, educate our partners through the process with, right? So when I look at crowded market space, I think of it in four main ways um, to to be able to hack and build the brand presence, right? So the first is differentiate with clarity. The second is be where your audience is. And then the third is be able to tell authentic customer stories. And then finally, be able to and consistency is always going to be key. So when we talk about differentiate with clarity, don't try to be everything to everyone, right? You have to be known for something specific. So whether that's transparent pricing, whether that's faster onboarding, really understand your merchants and then be able to offer them the value proposition that you know that they are coming to you for, right? So we're not going to try to compete on price and try to have the fastest onboarding, right? Like you have to pick something and then really be hone in on that because you know your merchants care about that. So I think that's very important. And then the second thing is be where your audience is, right? So show up in the right channels. So is your audience predominantly at industry events and that's kind of where they're talking to you? Or are they on social media? Or are they really responsive via webinar? So just figuring out what channels and where your audience is most present is also key. And then being able to add the educational value where they're present is the way that you get them through the door. And then be able to tell authentic customer stories, right? So let your customers, let your merchants be your biggest advocates, right? Because real stories are going to build that credibility. It's going to build that trust. So for example, right? We hosted a webinar with one of our partners where we did a panel of all of their top merchants that were using integrated payments, right? And they shared stories of how that's changed their business and how it's helped them level up and how it's really impacted their business in a very positive way. And that actually became one of our most attended events for that partner, that webinar that we did. And then we were able to really drive post webinar engagement as well. And that was probably the highest post webinar engagement. And I think it shows how much stories sell better than just pitches, right? So that's the other thing. And then finally, I want to talk about consistency is key, right? So it's not just like a one, uh, just send an email once a month, right? And expect your merchants to be converted or be engaged with you. So every touch point, whether it's your website, your emails, like it needs to be a cohesive strategy that's going to all reinforce the same message. So I think when we're thinking about the crowded marketplace with so many payment providers in the industry, really have to kind of differentiate yourself, be where your audience is, and then be able to consistently deliver on the message with these foundational concepts.
Yeah, I really love that approach. I think that's such an interesting and just something that's not called out as much as just picking something that you're known for and just making sure that that differentiation, right, is something that you just keep saying over and over again, and just
Correct.
making sure that your audience understands that, and then again, just making sure that that's said wherever they're at. Just I love the examples that you shared. So I think that's a very, very helpful tip. Just make sure that you're have that differentiation figured out, for your new payments product. So as Eliza is alluding to, getting that identified and then just saying that consistently in the right places where your audience is. So I love that tip. Eliza, how can we create a compelling value proposition that resonates with merchants and consumers?
Another really great question, right? So this one's really at the heart of being able to drive that growth, both for merchants and for ISVs that are serving them, right? So being able to create a compelling value proposition really starts with understanding your customers. You really have to understand what drives the merchants, what what's the reason why they want the specific solution. So for merchants, it's usually about growth, or it's about efficiency, or it's about simplicity. So we really want to be able to offer them tools that are going to help them attract and retain their customers, that are going to help them streamline operations in some way or the other, right? Or help them ultimately, which is the goal of every business, is to help ultimately boost that revenue. So when we're crafting messaging or building solutions, we really want to highlight the specific outcomes that they care about, that the merchants themselves care about. So is it faster payments, right? Do your merchants care about increased foot traffic? What is like, are they caring more about better conversion rates, right? So really being crystal clear on what value you're driving and what your merchants care about. And then ultimately the most compelling value proposition is just going to come from the intersection of the two, right? What is that compelling messaging, and what is that compelling story that your merchants care about? And then being able to pair that with a unique offering that only you can deliver. And then being able to articulate all of those things in a very clear and concise way. So it's the short end of it is just being able to understand your merchants in a very personable way, whether that's through surveys or ideas like that, and then really being able to convey that messaging in a very clear and concise way. So it needs to be very tailored. It's not a one size fits all sort of messaging that you can just slap on to your marketing. It's more about really understanding the customer and then being able to give them what they're asking for through the messaging.
Yeah, that's very, it's that simple advice, but just also making sure that we're kind of following through. It's understanding our customers, knowing what their needs are, and then actually following through with that. So that's just great advice, Lisa. Thank you for that. So Victoria, what marketing channels are most effective for promoting embedded payments?
Yeah, so some of the most effective marketing channels we recommend for promoting embedded payments are thoughtful and timely email campaigns, webinars, and even things like in-app messaging. We support our partners with tailored content across these channels, coupled with takeaway collateral to help educate and influence decision makers beyond that initial touch point. I think increasing those touch points is an important part of it. And we've supported over a dozen partners this year alone with multi-channel campaigns, including webinars, email series, and one-pagers that have worked really successfully.
Awesome. Eliza, what marketing strategies work best for promoting payment products?
Again, I'm going to say there's no one size fits all, right? So the best strategies again are going to be very targeted, very consistent, and they're going to think about the whole process, right? Like the entire funnel, and not just kind of put you in right, like just send one email and that's going to solve all your problems. That's not how it works. So it's going to payments really need to be embedded into the core of your messaging, into the core of everything that you're kind of speaking about and all of that. So for example, one of our partners was sending like a monthly email, right, to their customers, and they were getting very little traction. And they're telling us like, we're doing a lot of marketing. We're sending, like this one email every single month, and we're not getting any like we're not getting any takers, we're not getting that conversion that we're hoping for. And so we kind of were able to meet with them and help identify like gaps in their onboarding and sales, right? So when we walk in, we kind of help partners look at their entire process, right? Whether it's onboarding or whether it's their sales process. And we need to make sure that we're kind of covering the entire funnel when we're looking at marketing, instead of just sending that one email or um, that one webinar once a month that we're doing with them, right? It needs to really be embedded into the entire process. And then again, it's just about that consistency. So bottom line, again, effective marketing, it needs to be sustained, it needs to be strategic, and it needs to cover your entire customer life cycle. And then it has to be very tailored at the end of the day.
I love that. Could you share a little bit more about some of the things that we did do with that one partner as far as just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more specifics and we can keep the name of the partner out of this, but I'd love to hear like what were the kind of specific things that you kind of went in and did, and if you have some high level
Yeah.
metrics there.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about the high level metrics, but absolutely can share about what we did with the partner. So for example, the partner was really struggling with getting conversions post. They have like a very long onboarding process for their product, and they were having, they had people commit to payments, and then because of that very long onboarding process, they had merchants drop off, right? When it was actually time to sign up. This was taking about they have like a 60-day cycle where they're just onboarding onto the partner's product, and then payments comes to attach like 60 days post that, and by that time people are disinterested, they're using their own payment solution, they don't really care. And so what we were able to do is we were able to get in with the partner and we're like, hey, let's figure out how we can get like consistently still keep the payments messaging alive in the beginning of your onboarding process. And let's at least get them to apply for payments, be signed up for payments. And then when it's time for them to actually use the product, all they have to do is just enable it. And so it's looking at things from that lens. They were sending that onboarding email, they were doing all those things, but we were able to kind of identify the gap early on with that consistency and that messaging. So that's something that we did with that specific partner. And again, it's so different for every partner, right? Some partners, the payments attaches quickly and they're onboarding within a couple of days and they're able to use payments. This partner, the onboarding process was just a lot longer, which is why we say it's not one size fits all. So when we meet with partners, we're kind of looking at their full strategy. We're looking at, okay, like, when are you onboarding? How are you onboarding? What sort of payments messaging are you using at onboarding? And so like that's kind of the value that we kind of bring, and what we think, how we think we should look at payments marketing. It's not just about sending a messaging about payments once a month. It's about looking at the full cycle, right? Like from conception, like it's, thinking about, okay, how are we even getting a customer? Like payments needs to be a thought that we have even before we're, like, how are we actually getting the customer? We need to start thinking about how to include payments, and then all throughout that process until we have the customer, they're in the funnel, and then they've converted. And then even post conversion, right? With testimonials and stories and all of that. So that's kind of the way that we need to be thinking about it.
Yeah, that's such a great example. I love that example. I think that, that's a tip that I think, the audience should really take away from this is look at how when you're introducing, the payments product, just like you talked about, and whether there's like, for this particular partner, there's this huge gap in between when when they bought the SaaS product, and then now when they're trying to get the payments onboarded. So making sure that that gap is closed, making sure that I think those are some great tips that you shared about starting some of the payment process earlier on during the onboarding. I think those are some great tips that people should really jot down.
Mm-hmm.
And really, some questions I think that, you should take back to your team right now are when are we introducing payments into our process, and
Right.
is there a long gap there? Because if we're seeing our payment attachment rate be below 50% on any new sale, that's maybe a possible red flag that
Right.
you're not introducing payments early enough, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's a great call out. So I hope that's a great low-hanging fruit that you should try to act on today. Really.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that anecdote.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So Victoria, the three-letter acronym that everyone cares so much about, ROI. How do we
Mhm.
track that how do we track the ROI on marketing efforts towards our payment solutions?
Yeah, well, that definitely varies from partner to partner and situation to situation, but we track ROI by aligning marketing efforts to specific business goals, whether it's adoption rates, utilization, or reduced time to that first transaction. So we monitor engagement metrics like email open and click-through rates, campaign attribution, and conversion from interest to activation. Tying those insights to payment-specific KPIs kind of gives us that clear view into what's working and then where we can continue to optimize. So it definitely varies, but we definitely do track through those specific business goals.
Yeah, that's a key to make sure that you know what the things are that you're doing, and then trying to figure out what are the, what things, what leading indicators, what are the things that are going to tell us like that, that this thing is working. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks for that tip. That's a great one. And then a follow-up, how can we leverage customer testimonials to drive our payment adoptions for different solutions that we have?
Yeah. Well, customer testimonials are so powerful. They're a great way to build that trust and credibility. I mean, think of how often we, in our own personal lives, rely on customer experience and reviews to make decisions. So when we share real stories about how a customer saved time, improved their operations, or increased revenue with our payment solution, it helps to highlight the impact, the real impact of payments of our payment solution. So these stories can be shared across email, social, landing pages, webinars, to help those prospective users see the tangible benefits through the lens of a peer, not just taking our word for it, but understanding that this is actually effective in
Mhm.
their vertical, and in businesses that are, aiming to see movement in certain areas just like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
And then
Eliza, anything else to add there? Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say it's when we're talking about differentiation, I think getting those testimonials
Mm,
is one of the key ways to get that differentiation because you're hearing firsthand, right? Like
mhm,
you're hearing from the customer about why this is so impactful and how it's impacted their business. So I think that's really important to kind of keep getting those testimonials. And then also like testimonials you can get in different ways, like just getting that user feedback so you can improve the product, and then figuring out where to go from there. Super key.
Love it. Had another question come in. Eliza, I'm going to direct this one to you. How can I differentiate my payment solution from competitors? So kind of back to, um,
Yeah.
differentiation and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So here's the thing. We talk to a lot of partners, and a lot of partners typically think that price is always the main differentiator, right? But really competing on price, we always advise our partners, right? Like you can talk about price, but it shouldn't be your main focus and it shouldn't be your primary differentiator, because it doesn't make the customer sticky, right? So competing on price is a race to the bottom, is what we always tell them. So we've seen much more success by focusing on product differentiation, and then tying that to and merchant education, right? So again, it all goes back to getting that customer and merchant feedback on what they care about. That should be the starting point, should always be what do the merchants care about, and then how can we deliver on that through compelling messaging, right? So again, add value with features. That's what we always recommend. So when we walk into a marketing conversation with our partners, we're always telling them, okay, what of your merchants, like what is the feedback that you've gotten from merchants? What are some, low hanging fruit features that we can add to make your product even stickier for merchants, right? Those are the conversations, and that's kind of the way in which we direct and kind of consult our, even through marketing, right? Because I think marketing becomes better when the product is really good, and we want to make sure that we're kind of advising you in that direction. So that's always key, right? So add value with features, and then simplify the pricing conversations. A lot of the times, merchants don't understand what the pricing means. So they might think that, oh, like so and so company has better pricing or it's cheaper, and so my customers are going to be more attracted to that. Well, that's not always the case, because there's pricing that companies headline, and then there's the effective rate. And so really simplifying those conversations and educating partners and merchants on what the pricing actually means and breaking that down, has been key for us. So I'll give an example of this, right? So we had a partner that told us that their merchants only cared about pricing. This was a deal breaker, and all of their messaging was very tailored around pricing as a differentiator. Well, we told them this is a losing game, but we kind of showed them and coached them through this. So we helped their team kind of reframe that conversation, right? So initially, they were getting a lot of objection on their sales calls, right? So they were getting a bunch of pricing objections on their sales calls. And once we coached them, once we kind of told them about effective rate and helped them reframe the conversation, within a few months, this was not an objection they were running into consistently. They still got that objection, but it wasn't taking up a majority of their calls, and they were able to have different conversations and more productive conversations that were just outside of that. And then lead with real outcomes, right? So merchants care about the growth, they care about speed, they care about the experience. And so being able to position your product um, to what your merchants will care about, which are those three things, really help drive that differentiator as well and help you differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Awesome. Love that. That's a great way to stand out for sure. It's not going to be on pricing, so make sure that you're communicating the value again. So I love that tip. That's super helpful. All right, we're at the end of the questions. I do want to give each of you what's one last tip? What's that one last kind of best advice that you have for marketing your payments products? So Victoria, I'll start with you, and then Eliza, I'll have you close us out. It can be something
Yeah.
that you've already said, just something that you want to like just emphasize and make sure that our audience is kind of walking away with, if they get one thing out of this conversation, what is that thing that you really want them to pull out of this?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is like I would encourage truly investing in marketing your payments early and often with thoughtful marketing. I love when partners come to us and they maybe admittedly don't have the information or the tools that they need to market payments within house. So we can help them craft something that is not just going to take up space in someone's email inbox, and it's going to be really effective and thoughtful. And I think the sooner that you hit your merchants or your target audience with that kind of information, the better.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Love
Eliza.
that. Yeah. And then again, I keep saying this over and over again, but I can't say this enough. Know your audience. Like, I think that is the marketing 101. Uh, you have to know your audience and what they care about, because sometimes if we're making those decisions and we think, okay, our customers are going to care about price, or our customers are going to care about this feature or that feature, we're not building for the merchant, then it's really hard for our messaging to really connect with the audience, right? So always have the customer first, right? Think about the customer first, or think about the merchant first, and know what their pain points are. Invest in, doing surveys for your merchants, right? So there's so many times where we're talking to partners, and when we get into conversations and we're like, okay, what's your customer feedback been like? What has your customer said? Have you collected any testimonials? And the answer is no. That really puts you on an uphill battle. So always invest in getting the answers from your customers. Like, that's so crucial. It's not just about creating compelling messaging, because compelling messaging can't be created unless it's going to uh, really impact the person that the messaging is for, right? So if the messaging is not going to resonate, it's not going to be good messaging. So know your audience, know what they care about, and then then you can create the messaging according to what your customers will care about, and then it'll resonate. So that's the biggest tip. That's the biggest thing that, we advise all our partners on.
That's awesome. Great advice. Again, I love that advice. That's, I just love that kind of customer centricity. So that really goes back to knowing your audience. So I could talk about marketing and payments all day long, but we don't have that amount of time. So I want to thank Victoria. I want to thank Eliza. Thank you for sharing your tips with our audience today. It's been great. It's been super valuable. I think there's a ton of great advice that you've given us. So um, I hope that everyone took notes. You're going to have a lot of things to work on. Um, if you have any other questions that Eliza or Victoria did not answer that you want some more advice for, feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure that they're happy to help you with that. And again, thank you again for spending your time with us today. And I hope that one of our big sayings here at Stax is embedded payments can be your fastest path to growth. I hope that this is a part of your journey in making that a reality. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, and take care. And that's it.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
All right. Thank you.